Dear brothers and sisters, let's continue to compose our minds and give our highest salutations to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha by saying sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Kame Sumiccācara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Musawada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Surameraya Macca Pamadattana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho viccacarana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati satta dewa manus sanang buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehipassiko opanayiko paccatang vedittabbo vinyohiti. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Ujupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Yadidang cattari purisa yukani atta purisa puggala esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punya kettang lokasati.
ดามิเจติยัมสัพพังสัพพตาเนสุปฏิติตังสารีริกดาตุมหาโบธิมบุตตรูปังสักกลัมสดายัสสมูเลนิสินโนวาสัพปาริวิจายัมอัคคาปัตโตสัพปัญญุตังสัตตาวันเตตังโบธิปาดปังอิเมเอเตมหาโบธิโลกนาเทนะปูจิตาอหัมปิเทนะมัสสามิโบธิราชานะมัตตุเตยานสารปฏิเตนะดีเปนะตมะจังสินาอิโลกดิปังสัพพุญจังปูจายามิตามอนุดังกันดสัมบารยุตเตนะดูเปนะหังสุกันดินาปูจาเยปูจานิยังทังปูจาปัจจานะมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตปานิยังปาริกัปปิตังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตโภจนังปาริกัปปิตังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตกิลานาปัจจยังอิมังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังปันนกันดากุโนเพทังเอธัมกุสุมาสันตติมปูจายามิมุนินตัสสะสิริปาดะสโรรุเฮปูเจมิบุตตังกุสุเมนะเนนะปุญเยนะเมเตนะจะโหตุมกขังปุปปังมิลายาติยัตถาอิดัมเมขายโยทัตถายาติวินาสบาวังอาคาสัทธาจะบุมมัทธาเดวานากามหิตติกาปุญญังธรรมนุโมจิตวาจิรัมรักขาตุโลกสาสนังอาคาสัทธาจะบุมมัทธาเดวานากามหิตติกาปุญญังธรรมนุโมจิตวาจิรัมรักขาตุเตสนังอาคาสัทธาจะบุมมัทธาเทวานากามหิตติกาปุญญังธรรมนุโมจิตวาจิรัมรักขันตุมัมปารังติเทโววัสสตุกาเลนะสัสสัมปติเหตุเชปิโตภาวตุโลโกเชราจบาวันตุตัมมิโกอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาหอนตุญาทายโยอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาหอนตุญาทายโยอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาหอนตุญาทายโยมินาปุญญคัมเมนะมาเมบาลสัมมากัมโมสัตตังสัมมากัมโมโหตุยาวานิพพานปัตติยา กายนะวาจาจิตเตนะปะมาเดนะมายากตังอัจฉยังคามะเมบันเตบุริปัญญาตถาคตากายนะวาจาจิตเตนะปะมาเดนะมายากตัง Acchayam kamame Dhamma santitika akalika kayena vacha cittena pamadena maya gatang Acchayam kamame sangha supatipanna anuttara
Karaniya mattakusalena yantang santang padang abhisamecca sakko uju ca suju ca suvacho casamudo anatimani santos sako ca subaro ca appakicco ca 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂 santindriyo ca nipakho ca Pagabbo kule su ananu giddo na cakudang sama care kinci ye na vinyo pare upawadeyung sukino va kemino hontu sappe sattha bawantu sukitattha ye ke chipana bhutatti Tasava Thavarava Anavasesa Digava Ye Mahantava Majjima Rasaka Nukatula Naparo Dittava Yeva Aditta Ye Chadure Vasanti Avidure Uttava Sambhavesiva Sappe sattha bhavantu sukitattha naparo param nikut beta nati manye takatta cinam kanchi biaro sana patigasanya nanya manya sedukka mitcheya matha yatha niyang puttang ayusa eka putta manurakhe Evam pisabba bhutesu manasang bhavaye aparimanang mettang ca sabba lokasming manasang bhavaye aparimanang uddang ado catiriyan ca asang badang averang asapattang titang caram nisinnova Sayano yavatassa vigata middo etang satim aditeya brahmametang viharang idamahu dittinca anupagamma silava dassanena sampanno kame suvineyagedang nahijatur Paseyang punareti etena satcha vajjena sottite hotu sappeda etena satcha vajjena sottite hotu sappeda etena satcha vajjena sottite hotu sappeda. By this declaration of the truth, may you be safe at all times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Very much, Sister Lily and Sister Doris, for today's nice puja. Now back with us this week, we have Brother Loo on to share with us on a reflection of Samyutta Nikaya 13, the Dhamma eye, which is a very important subject for all practicing Buddhists. Now we shall cross over to Brother Loo. Over to you, Brother Loo.
Thank you very much, Brother Terence, for the kind introduction. Okay, and a very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Very happy to be able to share the Dhamma with you again this morning. Okay, so before we begin with today's Dhamma's discussion, let us put our palms together in Anjali, and pay our highest homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One, whom through his effort and his compassion, he has rediscovered the path to liberation, and that has enabled us to practice the true Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, a very good morning again, brothers and sisters in Dhamma. Let me first of all share my screen. Okay, I've actually selected this compilation of sutta, from Samyutta Nikaya, connected discourses, and this is actually from chapter 13. And this chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya actually records the discourses, given by the Blessed One, to the monks, and he actually emphasized a topic in this Samyutta Nikaya that's actually very interesting, and a topic that's actually very close to my heart, which is on the arising of the Dhamma I. Okay, so. And this is something that's actually very interesting for us. As you know, this Dhamma I, is it is a vision, that's actually developed, when someone attains the first stage of enlightenment, that is actually Sotapaddi, when someone actually attains the stage of stream entry, So if you read the Pali Canon, you actually come across very inspiring stories, of lay people, and they're not even Buddhists, to begin with. They're just Brahmins, and they could be believers of other teachings, and ascetics from other schools, other teachings, during that time of the Buddha, and by chance, they just happen to meet the Buddha, and the Buddha, encompass his mind on these lay people, as well as the external ascetics, and the Buddha, was able to understand and fathom that these individuals were able to understand the Dhamma, and he actually gave a graduated discourse, in actually the Buddha actually gave this gradual discourses, by telling the listeners about, for example, about dana, sila, about heaven, about the danger, the degradation, and the escape in relation to sensual pleasure, and then the Buddha went on to talk about the Four Noble Truths, and then lo and behold, on the very spot, on the very same occasion, the moment they heard what the Buddha said, this Dhamma I actually arose. The sutta says the stainless, and the spotless vision of the Dhamma, actually arose in this person's mind, and he instantly became a Sotapanna. So we can actually see how inspiring, these accounts of how, seemingly they actually were not even believers of the Buddha's teaching, and they were from external. They actually were believers of external teachings, and they were not even Buddhists. They're just Brahmins, and they on the spot they just listened to what the Buddha said, and then this spotless, immaculate, spotless vision of the Dhamma arose in him, and then he instantly became an Arya, who is actually a Sotapanna, and he became a stream enterer, So this Dhamma I itself is something that is something that is actually very remarkable. It's actually a spiritual eye that we actually one develops when one becomes, first stage, Arya, So I'm sure everybody knows that this Dhamma I is it is actually the vision that one develops when one becomes a Sotapanna, becomes an Arya. Okay, so but the main emphasis or maybe the focus that I'm trying to actually share the Dhamma today is not about what it's not about what Dhamma I is, but it actually is we actually want to investigate, what actually entails developing this Dhamma I, You know, what actually, how does one know, you know, whether one actually has the Dhamma eye, you know, and what is what is it that one actually must have, you know, in terms of the prerequisites, you know, one must have in order for us to be sure, you know, that one actually has the Dhamma eye. Because if you actually ask different schools of Buddhism, you know, in the current in the current times, and if you ask, say, you know, if you ask someone, for example, you know, what do you understand by, you know, the arising of the Dhamma eye? You know, what does it mean, you know, when one actually has the Dhamma eye? So if you ask different schools of Buddhism nowadays, it is actually very certain you actually get different answers. You know, some schools of Buddhism, some schools may actually teach that, well, to actually have the vision of Dhamma eye, you know, means that one actually has the mindfulness to be able to see the arising and passing away, you know, of an object. You know, means if you're able to see impermanence, you know, during your contemplation, during your meditation, you know, that itself is actually the Dhamma eye. You know, that is actually one answer you will get. But if you ask other schools, you know, that actually perhaps subscribe to different ways of teaching, you know, they may actually tell you, oh, you actually have the Dhamma eye when you are actually totally absorbed in your jhana, you know, you know, and you actually in this this absorption, you know, where, you know, you are actually not where you know you're not where you're not percipient of your six sense basis. You know, the six sense doors are oblivious to you, and you are absorbed into this jhana. You know that, you know, like, for example, you know, this nimitta, you know, this light, you know, you absorb yourself into it, you know, and you actually become engulfed in this jhana. You know, that you do not know what happens in your five sense doors, and that itself is a manifestation of Dhamma eye, you know, means that you actually see non-self, you know, there's actually no self, you know. So you may actually find some schools actually teaching Dhamma eye is actually when you actually experience this total emptiness, you know, where you are absorbed in this jhana, you know. So and some actually teach that, you know, Dhamma eye is actually when you are just able to see things, you know, arising and passing away, arising and passing away. For example, when you actually you know, watch perhaps, you know, your maybe, you know, your breath, you know, or maybe the rising and falling of your abdomen, or maybe when you're actually watching your feelings, you know, you just watch your feelings. For example, it's an unpleasant feeling, you know, you watch the unpleasant feeling, come, persist, and go away. You know, come, persist, and go away. Just see it arise and pass away, arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. You know, don't actually have to think about anything. You just keep on watching. As it comes, it goes away. As it comes, it goes away. So and they actually then their view of Dhamma is that as long as you're able to watch this with sati, with mindfulness, you know, that itself actually is the Dhamma eye. Just seeing impermanence alone, come and go, and that itself is the Dhamma eye, you know. So based on what they actually teach, you know, essentially what they're saying is that Dhamma eye is actually equivalent to sati eye, you know. That means when you actually have this eye, where you actually have sati, you know, mindfulness alone, you know, you're just able to see arising and passing away. That itself is really Dhamma eye. Okay, so but then the question here is, you know, is this actually what the Buddha actually taught? You know, what this Dhamma eye entails, you know, in a Sotapanna. So when the Sotapanna actually has this vision of the Dhamma eye, is it just about just watching phenomena arise and pass away, just seeing things come and go, you know, without doing anything, you know, dispassionately just watching it come and go? Is that really Dhamma eye? So this is actually what I actually intend to investigate, you know, by sharing the Dhamma today with regard to this Dhamma eye. Not so much in terms of, you know, the fact that Dhamma eye arises in the Sotapanna, you know, and that itself is actually the characteristic, you know, of a Sotapanna, you know, I mean, we all know that, but actually I want to go a step further, by investigating exactly, what is this Dhamma I, that the Buddha speaks of in the sutta, that it actually arises in this a person with Sotapatti, this stream enterer. When you say the vision of the Dhamma arises in someone, does it mean that this Sotapanna just observe rising and passing away, but just using mindfulness, and nothing else? Is that really what Dhamma I means, based on what the Buddha actually has described, a Sotapanna? So this is very important because it will actually determine whether our path of practice, in terms of seeing the true nature of things, our way of meditation or our practice of meditation, whether that is actually in accordance with what the Blessed One actually taught in the Pali Canon. Okay, so that would actually be my focus of today's discussion, in terms of investigating, what this Dhamma I actually entails, as taught by the Buddha and also as recorded in the Pali Canon. Okay, so firstly, I'd just like to share with you in terms of this Dhamma I, the Buddha has actually spoken profusely, about this Dhamma I, the vision of the Dhamma, the Dhamma I, the Dhamma Chakku, as something that's actually very remarkable, and it is actually of great benefit, that actually, it actually is much more superior, and much more superior, than you are actually, being a universal monarch, even owning the treasures in the world. The Buddha says, having this Dhamma itself far outweighs, and is far more important, and far more superior, than one being a universal monarch. Means you are king of the universe, and even have the treasures, of this of the world. The Buddha says that those are not even equal to 1/16th part, of being a Sotapanna, when you actually have this Dhamma I, And of course, the Buddha says, when you have this Dhamma vision, your suffering in samsara has been reduced and curtailed to just up to 7 lifetimes in this samsara. And even then, your next destinations are just, either as a human, either in the human realm or in the Deva realm. And the 3 woeful planes are actually closed off. That you are not capable of actually descending into the 3 woeful planes. And this during your sojourn in this samsara for the 7 lifetimes, you're either as a human or in the Deva realm. So that's how wonderful having this vision of the Dhamma is. This Dhamma vision, if you have it, then this spiritual vision stays on with you, forever, and you can never regress to being a Putujana anymore, and you are destined for enlightenment. Niyati, the Buddha says, you are a niyato, means you are actually destined for enlightenment. Once you have this Dhamma vision that that arises in you, this spotless, clean, immaculate, spotless, impeccable, spotless, vision of the Dhamma, the dustless, stainless vision of Dhamma arises in you. It stays on with you, in this samsara for up to only 7 lifetimes. So you need to actually be in to suffer in this samsara for 7 lifetimes. Up to 7 lifetimes, for a Sotapanna, with this vision of the Dhamma. So that's how wonderful it is, And if you actually look at Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 13, the Buddha actually speaks about the remarkable qualities and the remarkable results of having this vision of the Dhamma. That it is in this SN 13.2, the Buddha actually says that if you actually have this vision of the Dhamma, of what the Buddha actually taught, if you're able to penetrate what the Buddha taught in terms of the Dhamma, that you're able to penetrate and see through to the true nature of the Dhamma itself, the true essence of the Dhamma, then the Buddha says that you have actually this vision of the Dhamma itself, and the suffering that you have in this samsara of up to 7 lifetimes is just like water on the tip of a blade of a grass compared to water in the lotus pond. Can you imagine, if you just draw some droplets, some droplets of water from a pond, from a huge pond. The Buddha says 50 leagues long and 50 leagues wide and 50 leagues deep. A league is about a yojana, is about, I think, if I check it up, it's about 7 kilometers. So can you imagine 50, times 7 is about 350 kilometers long, 350 kilometers wide. This is like almost from here, to Penang, that far, you know, that's huge lake, if you're able to just draw 2 or 3, you know, droplets of droplets of water on the blade of a grass, you know, compared to this water, mass of volume of water in this huge lake, the Buddha says the suffering that's left in samsara, if you have this Dhamma eye, is just like this water on the tip of a blade of grass compared to this water in the lotus pond. So the Buddha says it's indeed remarkable for us to actually develop this Dhamma eye, you know. And again, if you look at this 13.3 Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha again draws you know, this simile where he says where the Buddha says if you actually draw 2 or 3 drops of water from this confluence of river, you know, for example, in India, the Buddha says that there's this Ganges River, Yamuna River, you know, Achiravati, Sarabu, and Mahai rivers. All these rivers, you know, are huge rivers in India. The Buddha says all these rivers will converge into the estuary, right? You know, they confluence into the estuary, you know, at the mouth, you know, where it actually meets the ocean. This is where the estuary is, right? So the Buddha says where all these rivers actually converge into a confluence, and you just draw 2 or 3 drops of water from that confluence of rivers, compared to the huge confluence of the huge volume of water at the confluence of river. The Buddha says these 2 or 3 drops of water that you draw out from this great mass of water, you know, at the estuary, is just like the suffering that you're going to have in samsara for up to 87 lifetimes compared to samsara. Imagine, you know, in samsara, from inconceivable beginning until now, that we have suffered in samsara. It's inconceivable, you know. So and also what we are going to suffer in samsara if you actually are able not to, if you are not able to uproot ignorance and continue to actually continue to be shackled and chained to this samsara. The Buddha says it's inconceivable also, it will be the end of samsara. So the Buddha says the 7 lifetimes that you are going to stay in samsara is nothing compared to what you have suffered in the past in samsara, and what you're going to suffer, you know, in the future in samsara. So it's just like, you know, the 2 or 3 drops of water compared to this great confluence of a great volume of water at the confluence of rivers, you know. And again in 13.5, you know, the same simile the Buddha draws that the suffering, you know, as a Sotapanna with this Dhamma vision, you know, is actually about 7 clay balls of size of jujube seeds, you know, compared to the great earth, you know, which means if you actually have a roll, have 7 clay balls of size of this jujubes. Jujubes are actually very small, you know. So if you actually use the clay, the soil from the earth, and roll them into 7 small jujube seeds, you know, and you place them on the ground, and you compare this against the huge mass of earth, the soil, you know, on earth. Can you imagine the suffering, you know, for somebody with this Dhamma eye? It's only 7 of these 7 clay jujube seeds, you know. So the Buddha says it's remarkable for us to actually have this Dhamma, you know, Dhamma eye, this Dhamma vision. Again, in 13.9, you see the Buddha again highlights how the remarkable qualities and the remarkable benefits, you know, of having this Dhamma eye is if you actually place 7 small pebbles the size of mustard seeds, you know, if you actually place them, you know, at the foothill of the Himalayas, the king of the mountains, the Buddha says if you actually place these 7 mustard seeds at the foothill of this Himalayas, you know, the huge Himalaya mountains, the king of the mountains, the Buddha says you're suffering as somebody with Dhamma vision. It's just these 7 mustard seeds compared to the huge you know, Himalaya mountains. So you can imagine how remarkable having this Dhamma vision is. And again, 13.11, the Buddha again also uses this example, but again, in this example, instead of Himalaya, the Buddha actually highlights about this King Sineru, you know, this mountains, king of mountains, this Mount Simeru. If you actually place 7 pebbles the size of mung beans, mung beans are like green beans. If you place 7 pebbles of this mung beans, the green beans on this Mount Simeru, you know, then the Buddha says you're suffering as Sotapanna with this Dhamma vision, Dhamma eye, you know, it's just comparable to these 7 green beans compared to the Mount Sineru, you know. So that's how remarkable it is. Okay. So after seeing, that, how wonderful, and how important and how critical it is for us to actually develop this Dhamma vision, this Dhamma eye. So now the question here is that we need to actually ask ourselves, what exactly is this Dhamma vision, this Dhamma eye, that we actually need to develop, but that's so important for us, because that is the very first checkpoint, right? It's the very first ingredient, a very first factor, that we must have, in order for us to enter into the stream, such that we actually flow towards Nibbana, right? That is actually our first checkpoint. I mean, like when you actually go to any country, I mean, that is the first checkpoint you need to pass, right? So that you can enter the country, right? Okay, so the very first checkpoint you must have you must show your passport, right, before you can enter. So your very first passport into enlightenment and Nibbana is actually this Dhamma eye, So as Buddhists, we must actually be very clear, what this Dhamma eye actually entails. What is it that the Buddha actually refers to, when he says this spotless, immaculate vision, of the Dhamma, this dustless, stainless vision of Dhamma arises in somebody when he heard what the Buddha actually taught, when the Buddha gave about the gradual discourses, of the teaching, and then on the spot itself, that person has this vision of the Dhamma arises in him. How does it happen actually, because now, we are not as fortunate, as people, during the time of the Buddha, during the when they were all born in the Jambudvipa, which is actually in India, and that's where the Dhamma actually flourished. We didn't actually have the opportunity to meet the Buddha. Like we can see, from the suttas, if somebody actually had the fortune, or the good karma to see the Buddha could actually fathom and know, how to guide the person to be a Sotapanna and to actually in a way provide the right conditions for this Dhamma eye, to arise in the person. The Buddha knew how to actually maneuver, and how to actually structure his thought, so that the person could actually be led towards that Dhamma eye. But now we are not so fortunate, we didn't have the opportunity to meet the Buddha, but we still have the sutta with us, right? So we can actually find out from the suttas, what is this Dhamma eye, so that we can actually tailor, and structure, our practice, such that we can also move towards the right direction, to flow towards that stream to Nibbana, and also towards enlightenment, so that in this lifetime, at least, we should strive to be a Sotapanna, to attain stream entry, at the very least, so that now we can be assured that, we are destined for enlightenment, up to 7 lifetimes only, it's okay, but we can actually go at our own pace up to 7 lives towards Sotapatti, But the question now is, how do we practice this Dhamma eye, What is it that this person sees when you say there's this Dhamma vision? What is it that he sees? So for us to actually understand this, let us actually move. May I just bring your attention to this sutta, which is actually Anguttara Nikaya 8.12, which is actually called Siha, AN 8.12. Actually, this 8.12 is actually it's a very interesting sutta, about this General Siha. General Siha initially was actually a disciple, of this Niganta Nataputta, the teacher of the giants, and this General Siha, was a very senior ranking general, during the Buddha's time. And, he actually wanted to meet the Buddha because everybody has spoken so, praised the Buddha so much about the Buddha's teaching, about how the Buddha was a perfectly self-enlightened being, about, the wonderful teachings of the Dhamma, So he actually had this urge, and he was very compelled to meet the Buddha, but this Niganta Nataputta kept on discouraging him. So, what do you want to see this Buddha for? What? He thought about action and inaction. He taught people about inaction. Ask people not to do things. And very, very, very passive. About destruction of his life and all this. Why must you go and see him? He's actually is. You shouldn't be seeing him. His teachings are nothing. So, but then one day this the General Siha, became he actually, he couldn't stop him anymore, So he said, I don't care, now I'm going to actually see the Buddha. Then one day, of course, he went to see the Buddha, and the Buddha actually taught him the Dhamma, So actually what I'm trying to also highlight here is, you see the Buddha, gave General 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 the progressive discourse, which is a graduate discourse, okay? And Four Noble Truth, okay? Then you see, then just as the clean cloth rid of dark spots were readily absorbed by dye, so too, when General 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪, the general, sat in the same seat, there arose in him the dust-free, stainless Dhamma eye. Okay, see, the Buddha says, the Buddha actually describes the Dhamma eye. What is this Dhamma vision? The Dhamma vision is whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. Okay, this is what the Dhamma eye is. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. So whatever that arises, is subject to passing away. Okay, this is the Dhamma eye itself. Okay, this is the first sutta I actually want to draw your attention. And of course, the second sutta itself is actually from this Udana 5.3, which is about the leper called Super Buddha. I'm sure all of you have actually, read about this, this leper. So this leper, he had no knowledge of the Dhamma at all. He was just a very wretched man, having this leprosy. He was a leper, with skin disease. Everybody actually shunned him, like an outcast because he was a leper, right? And one day, he just went to see. Look, he actually was actually looking for food, and then there was one day he actually saw these people gathering around the Buddha, and I just went there. He said, "Oh, perhaps I'm able to get some food, and all this." So and the Buddha actually from his super psychic power, the Buddha was actually able to see that this Super Buddha was able to understand the Dhamma, penetrate the Dhamma, this abhisamanya, penetrate into the Dhamma on that day itself. So the Buddha actually gave this gradual discourses and the Four Noble Truths again, and then lo and behold, this Super Buddha, actually had this Dhamma eye, arose in him. You see, again, you see here. Just as a clean cloth free of stains, would properly absorb a dye, in the same way as Super Buddha, read this paragraph, as Super Buddha, the leper was sitting in the very seat, the dustless, stainless Dhamma eye arose within him. Again, you see the Buddha used the same description. Whatever is subject to origination is subject to cessation. Again, the Buddha actually used this phrase that whatever is subject to arising is subject to passing away, and that is Dhamma eye. Okay. Okay, and then another one, 8.21, Anguttara Nikaya. Again, you see, this householder Ugga, also, became a Sotapanna just by listening to the Dhamma discourse that Buddha gave, which means the Dhamma eye arose in him, And again, the Buddha actually describes Dhamma eye as what? As this Dhamma vision that's able to see whatever is subject to origination is subject to cessation, okay? So if you actually read this, these three suttas, you actually then come to a conclusion. Oh, actually, Dhamma eye is just seeing rising and passing away. Means whatever is subject to arising, is subject to cessation. Means you see rising, passing away, rising, passing away. Then that itself is Dhamma eye. Means you're able to see just impermanence alone, anicca. Then you're able to see Dhamma eye. Okay, but is that really the right conclusion? We need to actually investigate further, okay? So by just looking at it, this statement, we cannot form our own conclusion, right? I mean, you just read a statement, you're just actually reading it based on your subjective opinions, so it's actually not good enough. We need to actually see what the Buddha actually says. Our opinions don't matter, but we need to see what the Buddha actually says. So and then again, if you see this account of how Upatissa, actually, this is actually from the Vinaya, it's actually not from the Sutta, it's actually from the Vinaya. And here there's a recount of actually how Venerable Sariputta, before he became a monk, he renounced and went forth to the homeless life, and became a monk under the Buddha. At that time, he was actually known as Upatissa, So this Upatissa and his friend Moggallana, when they were both still lay people, and they actually left home and they were actually searching for the truth. They actually had this they actually made a promise to each other that we shall actually find the truth, the ultimate truth of existence, and we will not stop until we find the right teacher. So I'm sure all of you must have actually read about how this Venerable Sariputta actually met this Venerable Assaji, and this Venerable Assaji just gave a short stanza with 4 verses, and then there and then Venerable Sariputta actually became a Sotapanna. The Dhamma vision arose in him, and the Dhamma vision itself, arose due to what? Due to just this short stanza, that Venerable Asaji uttered. Whatever phenomena arise from cause, their cause and their cessation, such is the teaching of the Tathagata, the great contemplative, So you see, again, the stanza here is about what? It's about arising and cessation, right? Arising and cessation, But here, the 4th stanza itself doesn't just talk about arising and passing away. It doesn't just say whatever that arises means that it will pass away. What the 4th stanza here says, whatever arises from a cause, that cause and their cessation means what Venerable Asaji sum up is that the Buddha actually talk about what? Condition arising, right? Dependent arising, means whatever that arises, is due to causes and conditions, and whatever that ceases also due to causes and conditions. And we must be able to see, how this arising and ceasing happen due to causes and conditions, So this is actually the teaching of the Buddha, and in fact, this is the teaching of all, the Sammasambuddhas in the past, and will be the same teaching as what the future Sammasambuddhas will teach in terms of what? Condition arising, dependent arising, how phenomena arise through causes and conditions. This is what the Dhamma eye, once you're actually able to see this condition arising and dependent origination, dependent arising of all conditioned phenomena, all sankhara, then this Dhamma, then you would have actually penetrated, the Dhamma vision. You have the Dhamma vision who have arisen in you. So this is very important from this account of how Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana became Sotapanna. They actually became Sotapanna just by knowing that actually condition phenomena, condition things, arise through, causes and conditions. It's not just about seeing arising and passing away, but you must be able to see how things, how Dhamma, how things actually arise through causes and conditions. Okay. You see, and another piece of evidence also, if you actually look at this Majjhima Nikaya 74 about this external ascetic, a wanderer called 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷. 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 means, 𝓤𝓷 means long, naka means fingernails. So long fingernails. This ascetic, actually his name is called long fingernails, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷, And one day he actually went to see the Buddha, and there was this interesting conversation between him and the Buddha about the teachings, and there was this conversation, about what the Dhamma is. Okay, and this is actually very interesting sutta. You can actually read it yourself. But what I'm trying to highlight to you is at the end of the discussion, you see what happens is this Dhamma is so remarkable because in this sutta itself, see, during that time when Buddha was discussing with this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, this long fingernail wanderer, Venerable Sariputta was actually standing behind the Buddha, fanning the Buddha, Maybe at that time, Venerable Ananda was not yet the personal attendant, but Venerable Sariputta was actually fanning the Buddha. And then the Venerable Sariputta was actually listening to what the Buddha taught about this Dhamma, what the Buddha actually taught this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, about this Dhamma, And you see, and then when the Venerable Sariputta was reflecting on what the Buddha taught, his mind was freed from the cankers without clinging, So, which means Venerable Sariputta actually became an Arahant, during that time when this he was fanning the Buddha, and the Buddha was teaching this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 about this Dhamma, and during that time Sariputta reflected on what the Buddha taught, and then on the spot, Venerable Sariputta became an Arahant, means he was free from cankers without clinging, became an Arahant, fully enlightened, which means already became an Arahant, but. And of course, this Venerable 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, when he heard this Dhamma, there arose in him the stainless, spotless, vision of the Dhamma, and he is able to actually see whatever is the nature of arise is of a nature to stop. Okay, so actually, so now the question now is what is this nature to arise and nature to fall, to cease? Is it really just seeing rising and passing away? Is this just seeing impermanence? Actually, if you read, what the Dhamma actually, what the Buddha actually taught in terms of the Dhamma, actually when the Buddha taught this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, he was actually teaching this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 about our five aggregates, So the Buddha was describing our body, and the Buddha described our body as impermanent, okay, anicca, and then suffering, dukkha, and then anatta, non-self, So which means the Buddha was actually teaching about how our five aggregates arise through causes and conditions, It means that's why the Buddha says it's actually empty, it's non-self, So again, from this sutta alone, we see that actually when we actually have the vision of the Dhamma eye, it is not just about seeing phenomena arise and passing away. It means you just watch, just meditate, and just watch your rising and passing away. Just the way see rising and passing away. That is actually not the Dhamma vision. The Dhamma vision that the Buddha actually describes here is actually when you're able to see the dependent arising and the dependent origination, of our five aggregates. So that is actually so that's actually something that we actually need to be aware of, that the Buddha actually is not just not describing about, not just about rising and falling away, not rising and cessation, but actually in terms of non-self, means how things arise to causes and conditions, So that we must actually be very very careful, that we must actually understand what Dhamma eye, means, when as taught by the Buddha, that what the Buddha taught in terms of Dhamma eye is not just about seeing rising and passing away, just simple as rising and passing away, but you must be able to see how phenomena and your five aggregates arise and pass away through causes and conditions, through conditioning, and that's why because of this seeing how this arise through causes and conditions, we're able to actually penetrate the non-self nature of the five aggregates, and conditioned existence as a whole, our sankharas, So that is a very, very important distinction that we must able to see in terms of Dhamma eye. That's something I want to share with you this morning. After knowing this, right, that we must be able to see condition arising, through causes and conditions. If you actually look at how this Dhamma eye arose, if you actually read the past suttas, we see that actually the Dhamma eye arose when actually the Buddha has actually taught about the Four Noble Truths, right? Okay. And the Buddha actually says here that if you actually do not actually understand the Four Noble Truths itself, this Dhamma eye will not actually arise in you, So that, and you actually see that from Samyutta Nikaya 56.21, okay. The Buddha says here, bhikkhus, is because of not understanding and not penetrating the Four Noble Truths, then you and I have roamed and wandered through this long course of samsara, okay. And what is this Four Noble Truths? And it's actually about the noble truths of suffering, is actually understanding the origin, the cessation of suffering, and also the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So as long as you have not actually, you're not able to actually understand, experientially, not just in terms of knowledge, this Four Noble Truths, it's just you must be able to actually have a glimpse of Nibbana, by actually experientially understanding, and experiencing it personally and directly yourself, the Four Noble Truths, then as long as you don't actually have this experience for the Four Noble Truths, then this Dhamma eye actually doesn't arise, and you are still in samsara, okay? So that is how important seeing this Noble Truth is, okay? Because earlier I spoke to you about what Dhamma eye means, right? It's not just about seeing rising and passing away, but you must be able to see how phenomena arise through causes and conditions, dependent arising of causes and conditions. So that is actually one point that I want to highlight, and the second part, I want to highlight is actually about this Four Noble Truths, and you must be able to see this Four Noble Truths. If you're not able to see the Four Noble Truths, then you don't actually have a glimpse of Nibbana, and again, in Samyutta Nikaya 56.35, the Buddha, in this discourse, the Buddha says, he actually gave a very, very excellent summary, of how important understanding Four Noble Truths is. He says here that if you actually could live up to 100 years, okay, so assuming you can live up to 100 years, and then and someone actually tells you that every morning someone will actually strike you with 100 spears. At noon they will strike you with 100 spears, and in the evening they'll strike you with another 100 spears. And you are being a good man, being struck day after day by 300 spears. Means every day during this 100 years, you are being actually struck by 300 spears every day non-stop. During this 100 years. And the Buddha says that after these 100 years have passed, you will actually be able to penetrate the Four Noble Truths, and able to have a glimpse of the Nibbana, to which you had not broken through earlier. The Buddha says you must actually gladly accept this offer. It is fitting because for a cleansed man intent on his good to accept this offer. For what reason? Because the samsara is so long, without a discoverable beginning. A first point cannot be discerned of blows by spears, by swords, by axes. That even though this may be so, that I do not say the breakthrough of the Four Noble Truths is accompanied by suffering or displeasure. So what the Buddha is actually saying, that if you are able to live 100 years, every day on this 100 years you are being actually struck by 300 spears, and at the end of this 100 years, if you're able to actually penetrate the Dhamma, able to experientially know and see the Four Noble Truths, this Dhamma vision arises in you, you're able to actually have a glimpse of Nibbana, then the Buddha says, please gladly accept that offer, because if you do not actually able to see the glimpse of Nibbana through the Four Noble Truths, after these 300 years, the samsara you're going to experience is far greater than you being poked by this 300 spears every day, for your next 100 years, during this 100 years of your lifespan. So the Buddha is trying to emphasize here how important, seeing this Four Noble Truths is, okay? And how do we actually then, this Four Noble Truths, how do you actually, how you're able to actually see this Four Noble Truths itself, that is actually we need to see, right? How do you actually able to penetrate to this noble truth, this Four Noble Truths, that you're able to have this vision of the Dhamma arise in you, then you can see from SN 56.44, again highlights the importance of this Four Noble Truths. You say, penetrate and see through the Dhamma means, you're able to actually understand, the spiritually and experientially the Four Noble Truths. If you're not able to break through to this Four Noble Truths, this abhisamanya, break through in this Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says the ending of suffering is impossible. And the Buddha actually gave an example here. The Buddha says here, if without having built the lower story of a gabled building, I will put up the upper story. That would be an impossibility. For example, if you want to build a house and you haven't built the first floor yet, but you want to build the second floor, So Buddha says, if you actually do this, right, if you actually propose this, it is actually impossible. It would be quite ridiculous, right? That you say you want to build a second floor, but you haven't built the first floor yet, So how can you build? The Buddha actually gave this example. So the same thing, the Buddha says, if you want to end samsara, but you haven't actually even seen, don't even have this Dhamma eye itself, then actually it is actually very impossible. So this is actually what is presented under this SN 56.44. To have that Dhamma eye in you, that you're able to see that this, what the Buddha taught in terms of Four Noble Truths, is actually intrinsically and inherently correct. Are you able to say that for sure, that you actually have this unshakable, unmovable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, this avijja pasada, are you able to have that confidence to tell anybody, I don't even have to, force myself to hold my faith firm on the Buddha, because my faith in the Buddha is already strong, that I'm able to know for sure, that what the Buddha taught is correct, because I know I verified it myself. Can you actually say that for sure or not? This is actually what the Buddha says in terms of penetrating the Four Noble Truths. If you are not able to and just read the Four Noble Truths, that is actually just knowledge. It is actually not the wisdom that that you need to become a Sotapanna, or to have the Dhamma eye. So how do you actually see the Four Noble Truths? To answer that question, you have to go to SN 56.13, where the Buddha actually talks about the aggregates, means the 5 aggregates. And again, the Buddha here tells the bhikkhus that this four noble truths, okay, we all know that, okay, but what I'm trying to understand here, trying to highlight here is the first sentence here, see, and what bhikkhus is the noble truth of suffering, okay, and this first noble truth of suffering, it should be said that the Buddha says the first noble truth of suffering is actually that these five aggregates, these five khandhas, that we actually have in terms of our body, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. These five aggregates are subject to clinging. That is the form aggregate subject to clinging, up to the consciousness subject to clinging. As I mentioned just now to you, the five aggregates, they are subject to clinging. This is the noble truth of suffering. So the first thing first is you must contemplate the five aggregates, to able to see the true nature of these five aggregates are subject to clinging, okay? Once you're able to see the first noble truth, very naturally, the second noble truth itself, in terms of the origin of suffering, how the origin suffering? The origin of suffering is because of what? Craving, the craving because you do not understand, about, the first noble truth, that all conditioned phenomena are actually non-self, they're actually intrinsically empty, and because of non-self, they are impermanent, they're also suffering. Because you actually regard everything, as permanent, as self, as having a permanent, unchanging self. That's why you have this ignorance that everything has a self, that you cling to it, you crave for it, and that's why the second noble truth is the arising of suffering is what? Because of craving. And once you actually know this, you're able to become dispassionate and disenchanted. You slowly let go, and you give up, and you let go, and you actually do not cling anymore, to this phenomena and also five aggregates as a whole. And that's where the cessation of suffering comes about. That's where nibbana comes about, because you actually uprooted craving. And of course, the fourth noble truth is actually the path leading to the way of suffering, the end of suffering, which is actually the noble eightfold path. So once you understand this four noble truths, then this glimpse of the nibbana, the glimpse of nibbana through the Dhamma eye has arisen in you. This spotless, immaculate, stainless, dustless Dhamma eye has arisen in you, because you're able to penetrate what the Buddha taught in the four noble truths is really correct. So for us to understand the four noble truths, we must start actually from the first noble truth of suffering itself. How do we actually contemplate, in terms of these five aggregates? The Buddha in this Samyutta Nikaya actually talks about the first noble truth is actually about these five aggregates. So how do we contemplate these five aggregates? Okay, so to answer that question, we need to go to SN 22.122. It's actually about this sutta called the Silavan Sutta, the virtuous. It's about this conversation between Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahakotita, And it's very interesting, this sutta, because Mahakotita actually asked Venerable Sariputta, how should we practice? First of all, in order for us to become a Sotapanna, right, to become a stream enterer, how do I practice in order for me to actually attain Sotapatti, for me to actually uproot to three lower fetters? How do I practice? And Venerable Sariputta says, see here, the Venerable Sariputta says, if this virtuous monk, were to actually want to become a Sotapanna, he should first attend in an appropriate way to the five aggregates, five aggregates subject to clinging. How must you contemplate these aggregates? You must contemplate these five aggregates as what? Inconstant, anicca, stressful, disease, is a cancer, it's an arrow, it's a painful, it's an affliction, it's an alien, it's a dissolution, it's an emptiness and not self, So if you read the sutta here, Venerable Sariputta didn't stop just by saying, just contemplate the five aggregates as impermanent and inconstant. He didn't just ask Venerable Mahakotita, oh, you just contemplate the five aggregates as impermanent. That's good enough. He didn't, Venerable Sariputta actually says inconstant, followed by stressful, means by dukkha, anicca, dukkha, and then ends by contemplation of what? Emptiness and non-self, means you must actually contemplate and see breakthrough into anatta, So actually, you must actually contemplate the five aggregates as anatta. So what this sutta and what I actually highlighted earlier about the vision of the Dhamma, about seeing this vision of Dhamma means seeing the condition arising through causes and conditions on the five aggregates. Actually, both are are actually very, very consistent, and they actually interweave seamlessly, See what the Buddha taught is so wonderful, in terms of the Dhamma, everything is so constant and so consistent. There's no inconsistency or nothing that is inconsistent on one side and then he says differently on the other side. Everything is so consistent. Just now, remember, I actually highlighted to you about this incidents or accounts of how lay people became, had the Dhamma eye, and then the Buddha says this Dhamma arose in him, whatever is subject to arising, subject to cessation. And I actually highlighted to you, actually it's not just about seeing rising and passing away, but also seeing condition, how things arise and pass away through causes and conditions. Remember or not, what Venerable Asaji told Venerable Sariputta, he's actually seeing how things arise and pass through conditions. You must be able to see how things arise through causes and conditions. Because if you're able to see how things arise through causes and conditions, you are able to see that there's actually no intrinsic self, in all the phenomena. For example, our 5 aggregates, there's nothing. There's no self, means unchanging self in all this, but everything arises through what? Interplay of causes and conditions, That's why when these conditions change, then, this phenomena also change, So there's actually nothing permanent and nothing unchanging about this self, because it actually arises, it actually, its form, through constructions, is constructed, is a construction through causes and conditions. So once these conditions change, so this phenomena also change, So that's why it's non-self. It arises through causes and conditions. Just like, for example, if you have an oil lamp, there's a fire, right? You light an oil lamp with a wick and an oil. So if you see the fire, the lamp, the oil lamp, and you see the fire being lighted up, and this fire, if you actually think about it, contemplate carefully, arises through what? Through oil, and through the wick, the oil wick, but once you actually remove the wick, for example, the wick is burnt and exhausted, all the oil is exhausted, then this lamp, it actually naturally extinguished, it's actually extinguished. So there's actually no permanent self to it, it's non-self. That's why if you're able to see causes and conditions, in such a way, then you are able to see non-self, in a very, very profound way spiritually, that is actually through causes and conditions, So that's why, the Buddha, this Venerable Sariputta says here, it's actually very true that everything arises, you must actually see through these 5 aggregates in terms of what? In terms of non-self, in terms of emptiness, You shouldn't just stop at just seeing anicca alone. You must be able to see non-self, how things arise through causes and conditions, that is, and to actually understand how phenomena actually are non-self, anatta in nature, This is actually one very important difference I want to highlight to you in terms of Dhamma eye, because a lot of times, people actually agree, and they actually have this notion that Dhamma eye is just seeing impermanence, just seeing arising, passing away. But actually, if you actually read the suttas, actually it's not. It's not about just seeing, but actually seeing more deeply and more profoundly the nature of anatta, which is non-self. So we can actually see from the sutta here, it's like if you want to be to have this Dhamma eye, you must concentrate the 5 aggregates in terms of what? Non-self. And of course, Venerable Sariputta continued to say, if you want to become, Sakadagami, Anagami, and even Arahant, you must continue to contemplate the 5 aggregates in terms of non-self, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's not just looking at anicca only, but also anicca, dukkha, anatta. So this sutta is a very, very important sutta that we must also take note of. Okay. And of course, I also want to highlight to you this AN 4.45 in about this Dewa called 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂. I think I mentioned this before. 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓲, before he became a Dewa, he was actually an ascetic, with very powerful psychic powers. He was able to travel into the universe. And this 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 was actually trying to find a place where there is no birth and no aging, no death, he wants to go to a place where nobody grows old and nobody dies, So which means like to find a place where we can have everlasting happiness, like a heaven where we all don't grow old, but we can be happy forever, and everything is is actually has a permanent self to it, that everything is unchanging, Then of course this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓷 actually died, halfway, before he could find the place and became a Dewa, Then after that, when he became a Dewa, he came to see the Buddha, and the Buddha told him that, friend, it's not possible, no matter how far you travel in this entire cosmos, the Buddha says that you can travel this entire universe, you cannot find a place where nobody grows old and nobody dies. You can never find a place where you can ever have everlasting happiness in a heaven where you can be there forever and ever, enjoying happiness forever. You don't grow old. Everybody is young and happy, and enjoying your life. The Buddha says, sorry, there's no such a place. Sorry to disappoint you, but there's no such a place, So they say, actually, there is actually one place where you can find such a place. The Buddha says, you shouldn't have traveled so far away into, the cosmos. Actually, the ending of suffering, where you don't grow and die, is within you. Is within this fathom-long body, this 6-foot-long body. With the 5 aggregates. This is where you should contemplate. Why are you, going out and traveling all the way to the universe to find such a place? It is nothing but your 5 aggregates. So the Buddha says, if you can actually contemplate these 5 aggregates in terms of anatta, so that is actually the place where you can actually have this Dhamma I arise in you, So that's how wonderful it is, for you to be able to contemplate the 5 aggregates. So then the next question is, how do we contemplate the 5 aggregates, Or like I mentioned to you before, I think I've already covered this quite extensively in my previous talks. To actually contemplate the 5 aggregates, you must actually place your sati, your mindfulness in your 6th sense basis, which means anchor your mindfulness in the 6th sense basis. Of course, you start by actually anchoring your 5 sense doors first. Once you're able to have your sati anchored, by way of this, by way of placing your mindfulness on the 5 sense basis, then naturally you're able to actually watch your mind. You're able to watch your mind, So the Buddha says that the first thing first, you must actually have what do you call it? Sati, is actually to maintain your sati. And this is where samatha meditation is very important, because you need to actually quieten down yourself first, by actually be mindful, and anchor your sati on the 6 sense doors, on your 5 sense basis, and also your mind, which means, whatever you see, whatever you smell, whatever you hear, whatever you taste, whatever you comes into your contact through the tactile sensations on your body, and whatever your mind cognizes, in terms of the thoughts, in terms of all the perceptions, and the feelings and everything, you must actually maintain your sati, in this 6 sense basis, and watch your mind, very carefully every day, whenever an external sense object, impinges on your sense door, comes in contact with your sense doors, you must be able to, watch your mind carefully, how your mind reacts to these 6 sense doors. Is there any kilesa, any defilement that arises in you? For example, is there any loba, any dosa, any moha, that arises in you? This is what the Buddha calls the citta nupassana. It's a foundation of establishing of mindfulness. If you actually read Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 10, in terms of this Satipatthana Sutta, you're able to actually see how well the Buddha has actually established in terms of establishing your sati, in terms of watching your body, your feelings, your mind, and your phenomena, mind objects, your phenomena. This is 4 ways, of actually establishing your sati. And one of the ways, the 4th foundation is actually what citta nupassana. So you watch your mind constantly. Is there any loba, dosa, moha that arises? Is there any, or is there any absence of loba, dosa, moha? No? So once you actually know, for example, something comes into contact with your sense doors, and then, for example, if you see something that's really enticing, something that's actually very engrossing, that it actually it actually attracts you, you start to grasp it, and you crave for it because it's sensually enticing, whether it's in terms of food, music, or whether it's in terms of you see some attractive persons, of the opposite sex, especially, then wow, then you become very attracted, then you know that this loba has arisen in you, then you should actually immediately, you have to actually know that this loba has arisen in you, and you need to know that this loba, how does it arise? Oh, it's because of what? Because of craving, and you need to investigate. You need to actually that's what the Buddha says, ehi pasiko, you must be able to investigate, this, how this loba actually arises in you. It's because of this craving. And how is this craving? What is it conditioned by? Oh, this craving, is actually conditioned by what? Pleasant feeling. I feel very pleasant. And how does this pleasant feeling arise? Oh, it's because of what? Because of thoughts. Oh, I know that this is a delicious plate of food that I like so much, durian, the Musang King. Wow, I cannot stop myself from eating it. And I crave for it. And I know, and how does this thought arise? It's because of perception, right? Perception. You know that, oh, this is durian. You know that, or this is and it's some or it's a delicious plate of food, or nice music, or what, then your perception, that this is something enticing. And how does this perception arise? Oh, it's because of contact. All this arise because of what? Because of contact. What? Contact because of your eye, because of your ear, because of your nose, your smell, your tongue, your body, and your mind. All these are because of contact. And how does this contact arise? Oh, it's because of what? Because of the arising of the consciousness, coming together, with the sense doors and the sense object, So and this and you're able to see how all this interplay of these causes and conditions, that actually cause loba to arise. The same for this dosa as well. And then whenever there's anger in you, you actually contemplate, investigate, the condition arising, of this loba, dosa, moha. Somebody speaks harshly to you, or somebody actually slanders you, backbites you, or then once you hear what, you can feel the anger, boiling in you, right? Then you say, oh, anger has arisen, then you must have this citta nupassana, watch your mind, and try to calm yourself down and investigate how this arises through causes and conditions, and you're able to see non-self, okay? So that's why in this Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha actually asks the monks to actually contemplate 6 sets of 6, What is this 6 sets of 6? Actually, is a 6 sense doors, and every six sense door, there's actually 6 sets of things you must actually contemplate, right? In terms of your craving, in terms of the feelings, in terms of the perception, in terms of the contact, in terms of this sense basis, So all these are the 6 things that you actually must contemplate whenever an external object actually external sense object actually comes into contact, and impinges in the sense doors. This is how you should actually contemplate the 5 aggregates. So this sutta, is wonderful because it actually converges, the 5 aggregates with the 6 sense doors. It's very important, especially for the meditators and the practitioners, for you to meditate, that you're able to have this open mindfulness meditation. What I always say, open mindfulness. You must always open up your 6 sense doors so that you're able to experience this how your mind reacts, and you're able to see, anatta. Once you're able anatta, once you're able to see anatta, non-self, naturally, once you see something as non-self, you're able to see anicca and dukkha already, very naturally, But if you're able to, if you see anicca alone, you may not be able to see anatta, because you will see impermanent, but you do not see the condition arising of causes, conditions, how things arise through causes and conditions. You're just able to see the anicca, anui, and then you may actually have the wrong idea that, oh, everything is impermanent intrinsically. There's nothing to it, it's just like that. It's just impermanent. There's nothing that causes the impermanence. It's just by random only that things are impermanent. Or you may actually have this wrong impression that, oh, maybe there's some God behind, that actually makes these things impermanent, So you may actually have wrong ideas. If you just look at impermanent alone, you are not able to break through to the Dhamma. You're not able to have this Dhamma eye in you. So that's why the Buddha always highlights that you must always see a non-self, anatta. And anatta, if you read the Pali Canon, is actually the crown jewel of the Buddha's teaching. Nowhere in any teaching would you find anatta. In fact, all teachings that I know actually predicate and hinge upon the concept of atta. You must have something permanent before for you to place your faith on, right? For example, if you believe in certain celestial beings, you know, as your final savior, okay, and you place your faith in him, and it can be a Brahma or whatever, it's a super Brahma that you feel that, oh, this Brahma is you know, he creates me, and I'm going to go back to him, or what. You must have a atta on this Brahma, right? Because if you actually have anatta on this Brahma, how are you going to actually have faith in the Brahma who is anatta, right? So you become very clinging to this atta, you know, you always cling to this self. So how are you going to get out of samsara? You know, every time your faith value is dependent on this atta. So how are you going to actually understand anatta, you know? So that's why the Buddha's teaching is so beautiful, it's so remarkable. It's beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end, precisely because of what? Because of anatta, you know. There's nothing to cling on to, you know. You need to let go. You are free, you are light, you know. You're able to get out of samsara, you know. You're able to go up to the Brahma, to all the arupa Brahma, you know, and you're able to get out of samsara altogether because you're light. You don't grasp to anything at all, you know. So that is the beauty of the Buddha's teaching, you know. And to develop that Dhamma eye that's able for you to see things that you can let go, you must break through into anatta, non-self, not just anicca alone. No? That's why the Buddha asks us to practice these 6 sets of 6 to see how things arise through causes and conditions. And again, in this MN 146, on this Nandaka Sutta, I've actually explained this also many times in my talks as well. You know that this Venerable Nandaka, you know, it was his turn to teach the bhikkhunis, you know. Because he was quite reluctant at first, but the Buddha actually, you know, requested this Venerable Nandaka to teach the bhikkhunis, you know. And what did Venerable Nandaka teach the bhikkhunis? The same Dhamma, you know, about you see, the ear, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, you know. They ask them to actually contemplate whether it's impermanent, whether it's dukkha, whether it's anatta, you know. You see that, you know, if it's impermanent, it must be dukkha. If it's dukkha, it must be, you know, anatta. So you cannot regard the 6 sense basis as this is mine, this I am, this is myself. You see, the same Dhamma is being taught to the bhikkhunis, and this Venerable Nandaka even gave 2 very excellent and remarkable examples that you can see anatta, you know, through your mind's eye. You're able to see anatta. For example, you can imagine an oil lamp being lighted up, you know, just like when I mentioned just now. You have to ask yourself, how is that flame there? The flame is there because of what? Because of the wick and because of the oil. So is there because of what? Dependent arising, right? Through what? Through conditions, what? Through what conditions? Through the wick and through the oil. So can you really say that the flame is there without any conditions? Does it exist? Is it there by itself? Means it is there without any conditions, means it's forever there, you know, it can never be extinguished. It will be quite ridiculous to say that, right? You know, it will not be tenable for you to say that, because once the wick is burned out, or once the oil is exhausted and conditions change, the flame also is extinguished, you know. So that is non-self, you know. You must actually see how that flame arises through dependently arisen through causes and conditions. This is exactly what the Dhamma eye sees, the Dhamma eye of a Sotapanna sees, you know. No? And the same thing, he also gave another example of a shadow, you know. For example, one day you went to a tree, you know, and you sat down and read a book, but maybe you're not Isaac Newton, it's not about apple dropping onto your head, but in this case, you see a shadow, you know. You see this this shadow is formed because of what? Because of the sun actually shining on the tree and the tree trunk, and that's why the shadow is formed, right? Okay, can you say that the shadow is self? Means is not dependently arisen. Can you say that the shadow is there? It arises not due to causes and conditions. Can you say that? You cannot, because the shadow is there precisely because of the sun, because of the tree, because of the trunk, because of the branches and the tree leaves. So if you remove the tree, or the sun is actually covered up, you know, by black clouds, this shadow naturally, you know, disappears, you know, dissipates, you know. So it's there because of what? Because of causes and conditions. That's why it is anatta, you know, there's non-self, you know, it doesn't have an intrinsic unchanging permanent self to it, you know. So if you're able to have that Dhamma eye, that able to see how things arise through causes and conditions, then you are developing the Dhamma eye in the right way, you know, on the right path. You are actually practicing rightly to develop this Dhamma eye, you know, and you are not just developing the Sati eye, you know. If you just develop the Sati eye, you are just seeing the shadow. Oh, the shadow is here, the shadow goes away. The shadow is here, the shadows goes away. Or the flame is there, the flame goes away. The flame is there, the flame goes away. Then that is just a Sati eye. That is not the Dhamma eye, you know. The Dhamma eye is more than that, you know. The Dhamma eye, you must be able to see how phenomena arise through causes and conditions, through interplay of causes and conditions, how that condition phenomenon is constructed, you know, through conditioning, you know. You must be able to see that the constructed nature of constructions, you know. So that is what the Buddha says is the true Dhamma eye. It's not just the Sati eye. Sati eye, you're just actually sharpening your Sati Sampajanya only. You're just seeing things come and go, you know, impermanent. But you're not actually seeing the condition arising, you know, like what Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana actually experienced when he heard Venerable Asaji say, this is the teaching of the great Tathagata, you know, that, you know, how the arising and the cessation through conditions, you know. The moment they heard that, wow, that Dhamma eye just arose in him, became a Sotapanna straight away, you know. So that is what we need to understand. It's not just seeing arising and passing away. You must be able to see how they arise and pass away, through causes and conditions, you know. Okay, that's why you see, in this middle Majjhima Nikaya 152, there's also an excellent Dhamma, sutta where, you know, the Buddha talks about development of faculties. You see, and see, there was this conversation between the Buddha and this student called Uttara, you know, this Brahmin student, you know, and this Brahmin student, his teacher was called Parasariya, you know, and this Buddha actually asked this student, this Uttara, what does your teacher, you know, this Parasariya teach you, you know? Okay, how does he teach? So this Parasariya told this Buddha, says, my teacher taught me, when the eye sees nothing, sees no sight, and the ear hears no sound, then this is actually how he teaches us to develop the faculties. Means for you to actually develop the faculties, don't see, don't hear, don't smell, don't taste, don't touch, don't think of anything. Just leave everything empty, you know. I don't know, maybe just by entering into some arupa attainments, don't do anything, you know. Cut off your sense bases, you know. Don't hear anything. You know, I think this is also what some schools actually teach us, right? You know, leave your mind empty, you know. Don't think about anything when you meditate, you know, force yourself, don't think about anything. Whenever something comes to you, push it away, you know, come back to your object, you know, don't think about anything, leave everything empty. Don't hear, no, six sense doors are the devil's playground. Don't do that. But you see from here, MN 152, this is entirely opposite from what the Buddha actually asks us to practice, you know. Then the Buddha says, if this is what your teacher taught you, this Uttara, the Buddha says a blind person and a deaf person would have become arahants, you know. The Buddha actually tells Pasariya, you know. Then this Buddha actually says, instead, you should actually develop the faculties like in the noble one's discipline, you know. You should actually practice it based on what I teach you in the Aryan discipline, you know. How should you actually practice? You see here, with this paragraph is very, very important. When a monk sees a sight with their eyes, liking, disliking, or both liking and disliking come up in them. You know, the moment this liking and disliking come up in them, means what is liking? Liking means lobha, right? Greed doesn't mean the gross greed, you know. Greed can also mean a like, you know. You like something, it's also greed, you know. Okay, it's the spectrum of greed is very, very is huge, you know, the spectrum. Same goes for dosa as well. Dosa means it doesn't mean just anger and fury, you know, but just slight dislike, you know, like I don't like this person, you know, I don't like him, or I don't like him at all. It's also dosa, you know, it's also disliking. So the moment you actually see something with your eyes, and then this lobha, dosa, you know, and moha, you know, comes up in you, you must first of all watch your mind and immediately understand liking and disliking has come up in me, and you must contemplate what that is conditioned, you know, that is actually dependently arisen. It is caused You see, dependently originated. This is what the Buddha actually says. Dependently originated. You know, I'm actually reading what the Buddha says here. And this is peaceful and sublime, namely equanimity, you know. Then the liking and disliking both liking and disliking cease, and then the equanimity becomes stabilized. Means that the moment they actually see that these arise through causes and conditions, you know, this liking and disliking, lobha dosa, immediately cease. You know, this is how those who are actually practicing, you know, in a very, very advanced, they are already supreme. They have this supreme development of the faculties already. The moment they have this dislike, immediately they are able to see it's actually dependently a reason, you know, through causes and conditions. Therefore, it is non-self. Therefore, it's empty. Then this lobha dosa, you know, is uprooted and it's actually extinguished straight away on the spot. No, see, the Buddha says, how far is this lobha dosa being extinguished? It is just like the speed when you how a person with clear eyes might open their eyes and shut them, or might shut their eyes and open them. This is how the speed and the swiftness with which any lobha dosa arise in them, you know, actually get extinguished. This is the training of the noble one, you know. This is called the supreme development of faculties regarding sight known by the eye. You see, the Buddha says here, if you're able to see, you know, things through, for example, your mind has got lobha dosa, you're able to see straight away that it's actually non-self and empty. Straight away, this lobha dosa, you actually let go of it, you know, and the speed is like when you open your eyes, you know. And of course, the Buddha also talks about, you know, gave many examples, like, you know, about how fast, like for example, you know, like a drop of water will roll off a gently sloping lotus leaf, you know. This is how fast a person who is actually been training well, the supreme training of somebody who is able to eradicate lobha dosa moha on the spot, you know. The moment he sees something, the moment he hears something, the moment he smells something, he's able to catch hold that the mind actually has got lobha dosa, and immediately he contemplates, you know, that this lobha dosa is dependently a reason, is empty, is non-self, and therefore is impermanent, you know. And because of that, he actually lets go of it. How fast? It's just like when you open and close your eyes, or when you actually water roll off a sloping leaf, or for example, when how fast is actually like when you actually extend and extend your arm, you know, how fast you actually this person is able to eradicate this lobha dosa moha, uproot the lobha dosa moha. So you see here again, we can see this seeing non-self is actually the Dhamma eye, you know. This Dhamma eye is the vision of Dhamma that's actually very, very remarkable, you know, simply because you're able to see non-self and emptiness, you know, in the conditioned phenomena, not just arising and passing away of like impermanence. That's why if you look at this Samyutta Nikaya 35.55, you know, the Buddha actually, the monk actually asked the Buddha, no, Bhante, you know, how should one know? How should one see for the fetters to be uprooted? You know and see is actually the standard term for somebody who has actually developed Sotapatti, right? Sotapanna, first stage of sainthood, you know, Arya. You know, so how should one see and how should one know in order for the fetters to be uprooted? Then the Buddha says, Bhikkhu, when one knows and sees the I as non-self, the fetters are uprooted. When one sees the form, so I, form, you know, and then you have this in terms of the perceptions, you know, in terms of the volitional formations and consciousness, all these when the Buddha says you're able to see this as non-self, then you are actually uprooting the fetters. This is in Samyutta Nikaya 35.55. Again, we see the Buddha says you must see non-self. You cannot just see anicca alone, you know. You must be able to see non-self, anatta. You must be able to see in order for you to have the Dhamma eye. And also in SN 35.56, again, you see, again, the monks asked the Buddha, the Blessed One, how should one see, you know, in order for one to actually uproot the taints, for example, your kilesas and your taints. The Buddha again says you must see, you know, the 5 aggregates starting from the eye, you know, the form, the sankhara, you know, and also the perceptions, you know, and also your vijnana, the consciousness. All these must actually be seen as what? Non-self. You see, non-self must be able to be penetrated, you know. if you just see anicca, then you are not seeing the Dhamma I. That's why in this Iti Uttaka, the Buddha says, it's because we cannot actually penetrate non-self nature of our 5 aggregates, and also the phenomena as a whole, as a sankhara, means conditioned phenomena as a whole. We're not able to see, we're not able to see, the underlying nature, Sabbe Dhamma anatta, means that all things, are actually non-self, If you have this ignorance, this darkness that actually shrouds you, then forever you cannot see the Four Noble Truths, and you're not able to actually see the intrinsic nature of things, which are actually what? Dependently constructed and dependently arisen through causes and conditions. That's why they are non-self. That's why they are not worth clinging to. That's why you should actually let go. And through letting go, you're able to, overcome the fetters, and overcome all the asavas, because of what? Because of ignorance. Ignorance is the one that is the kingpin. He's the mastermind behind. This ignorance is really the culprit, the main culprit behind all this. Why we have been traveling around in samsara for so long is because of what? Because of ignorance. And why is ignorance of what? Ignorance of all things are anatta. Sabbe Dhamma anatta. And also sabbe sankhara anicca, and all conditioned things are impermanent, and all things are non-self. That's why the Buddha says you must be able to see that, if not, then forever you're still in samsara, And you see this somewhere in Nikaya 28.83, Venerable Ananda, he became a Sotapanna using the same way, by contemplating the 6 sense doors. Imagine the same way, this Venerable Punya Mantani Putta was actually teaching this Venerable Ananda, how to contemplate. You see, it's actually by contemplating what? The 5 aggregates as non-self. You see, it is by clinging, Ananda, read this paragraph, that the notion of I am occurs, not without clinging. And why? It is clinging to form that I am occurs, and without clinging, So it's by actually not understanding, these 5 aggregates through non-self, that you are able to that you are still you're still actually being shackled and chained to this samsara. Okay, so basically, in summary, okay, what I'm trying to actually highlight in this sutta is that this Dhamma I, is it is actually a spiritual I, is the Dhamma I, is a Dhamma vision that we develop, that is so important for all of us Buddhists to be able to develop this Dhamma I. And the Buddha has actually given us very clear instructions on the path as to how this Dhamma I should be developed. I know, that we tend to actually regard what our teachers teach us as correct. That I know there's a lot of focus, in just looking at impermanence. For example, you just look at the object, just see arising, passing away. Don't think of anything else, and that itself is Dhamma I. Actually, if you read the sutta, the Buddha says, yes, you can develop anicca, but you must continue to develop further, by looking at anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Anatta is the final destination, So if you actually just stop at anicca alone, then you have not actually developed the Dhamma I yet, So, but of course, you should actually develop straight, if possible, by looking at anatta straight away, because you're able to see anatta, then you're able to see anicca and dukkha, naturally, because anything that is form through constructions, it is naturally impermanent as dukkha, So that's why when you meditate, do not just focus on the object, but please watch your mind, watch your mind, how and whether anicca, dukkha, and anatta happens occurs or not. Then catch hold of it, and contemplate using a vipassana, contemplate how it arises through causes and conditions, and see non-self, with that. So because if you see, there's one sutta that the Buddha says, if you just watch your mind alone, you can actually become an arahant, straight away in this lifetime itself. This is actually from SN 35.152, this Ati Nuko Pariyayo Sutta, the Buddha says, if you're able to just watch your mind, whether any loba, dosa, moha arises in you, and contemplate it in terms of non-self, then you are actually capable, of achieving this arahanthood in this very lifetime itself, not to mention even become a Sotapanna, right? So that's why we must take heed of the Buddha's teaching, put our effort, develop this Dhamma eye, and let this Dhamma eye, arise in us, one fine day, it doesn't matter when. We can just need to continue to practice all we can, by focusing your mind on the six sense doors, practice the samatha and vipassana, tranquilize your mind, whenever something happens, through your sense doors, from there, contemplate how this lobha dosa moha arise in you through causes and conditions. From there, slowly you're able to let go, because if you're able to see emptiness, emptiness, is something that's actually emphasized by any school, whether it's Mahayana, whether it's Theravada, this sunyata, this emptiness is something that's very intrinsic in the Buddha's teaching, because of what? Emptiness because of non-self. It's because of non-self that phenomena are empty, It's not to say that everything doesn't exist. Emptiness means is actually subject to change, becoming otherwise. Because of what? Because they arise through causes and conditions. They can never be the same. So you become more forgiving, you become more flexible. When things happen, don't get your way. You tend to be more flexible, you let go, because things change. You can never expect things to be the same as what you expect, because of what? Because of anatta. Then you suffer less yourself as well. So slowly, you're able to eradicate the fetters. You become a Sotapanna, then second, third, and after that you become an Arahant. Then then you would have actually met the very, very, very purpose that the Buddha has taught us, the Dhamma, which is to get out of samsara as soon as we can. So and in this very life itself, while we are in the human realm, please try your best to practice to actually achieve Sotapatti, by contemplating the five aggregates through the six sense doors, like I mentioned to you, so that you can actually are able to see, understand and penetrate the Four Noble Truths, in a very profound manner, and have a glimpse of Nibbana, through contemplating the five aggregates, in terms of non-self. Then once you achieve, this Sotapatti, then you are assured, no more woeful planes, and your future destinations, are going to be very favorable, with just 7 lifetimes, up to 7 lifetimes, and you're out of samsara. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Luz, for today's sharing. Now let's dedicate some merits to all beings, whether they are seeing or unseen. Akasata ca bummata dewa naga mahittika punyang tam anumoditva 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓼𝓸𝓷 ettavata ca amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe dewa sabbe sabbe sattha numodantu sabba sampatti siddhya idang me nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo idang me nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo idang me nyati nang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani panapattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please go to the link below. Bye bye for now. See you all again next week.